keeping everything in its place. Everything is in its right drawer or right box. So there's a big satisfaction for me when everything balances out, knowing where my money is. And the other thing too is setting those sales goals. So I know how much do I need to bring in over the next few weeks to get to where I want to go, to bring that budget up to where I want it to be, saving where I need to save, investing where I need to invest, knowing what expenses are going to be coming up at the end of the month or mid-month, those things that we know we're going to have, those expenses every month or every week or every couple of weeks. It's all taken care of so I can get that out of my head and I can focus on running my business and just have the books take care of themselves because we know where every penny is going.
You got it. And what I find, Matthew, is that, basically when I compare what our lives looked like before having a budget, and because my fear was the budget would be the straitjacket, and the opposite was true. Not having the budget actually was the straitjacket. Like, we almost lost our home. We're up to our eyeballs in credit card debt, like when we had that serious reduction of income, and actually having the budget, even at rock bottom, I knew what our goals would be. We knew what things we had to adjust. We knew the income that had to come in. And once you know that, it fires you up. So that way the budget can lead you to freedom. And we're just in control of the money rather than it sucking the living life out of us, which typically happens. And that happens financially, it happens energetically. And so we want to have a process in place in order to be successful and to, like I said, start this company as if it's going to be a multi-million-dollar company. Let's just start it day one on the right foot. And that would be my recommendation for initial people starting a company. And for those that have been in business for quite some time, it's a great time to get started. So that way you can experience this transformation. You can have this clarity and this sense of peace and a sense of ease when it comes to your finances.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk about the emotional aspect of this. You were at a point where you almost lost your house, or you were in a lot of debt. And I'm curious to know, how long was it before you went from a place of being in that debt to helping others, with their debt, with their numbers, and feeling really confident about doing that?
It was right about 2 years. That was the time frame, because I just had, our second daughter, at that point in time. And then when my girlfriend had asked for assistance because she just had she sat back and kind of watched, our particular, transition through that. So it was about 2 years before I started my company. And before I started the company, when she said, Sonja, this is something that you should do, I'm like, that is just that's just an absurd idea. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work with people that are struggling with money, and I'm going to charge them money that they're struggling with to pay me. And so that's going to be my business model. And I'm just like, okay, that's just dumb. But now literally 9,000 consultations later, I don't mess with the model. I don't mess with it, because I find that when a person gets to the point that they've just had enough and they are really ready for a transformation, I tend to not attract to myself people that kind of sort of want to halfway have a budget. They can get that for free on their own. And I'm just really not the right person for that. Really, it's a person that's ready for an absolute transformation. Location doesn't matter. I have clients all across the United States, Europe, the Bahamas. And so I think, Matthew, and I know we've talked about this, before as well, because there is always going to be this tension. And if there's ever going to be tension, it is going to be when you've laid this budget out and you look at your bottom line numbers and you see, oh my goodness, these are my goals. Like, who am I? Who am I to live this lifestyle? Even if it's the most basic lifestyle, and it can evoke fear, and it can evoke panic, and it can evoke overwhelm. And that's kind of for me when I hit rock bottom and I saw, just for our bare basic, I'm talking 85 degrees in the house in the summer. Of course, we don't have cable because that's gone. I'm driving a $4,500 vehicle. The paint is peeling. The vehicle, it almost killed me, but that's a story for another time. I mean, we had ratcheted this budget down as tight as humanly possible. When everyone else, they were sending their kids to summer camp, I looked at my girls and I'm like, girls, I am your summer camp. and so we had to go to bare basics because we just did not have an option. So what happens when we look at the budget, and this is where I feel, and I'm a budget girl. I love a good budget. I just want to get my hands on a budget. But what happens is there's this transition that can happen, but we're not trained and taught. So this transition doesn't happen, and we don't have an expansion strategy that's going to help us to not be sucked into the budget world. So let me explain. Would that be okay, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at your bottom line numbers, and we just say, okay, now these are the goals. These are the goals. We can see these goals very clearly between now through the next 2 months, personally and also for the business. What can typically happen, that in and of itself can evoke that overwhelm, because in that moment, we might not know exactly how we're going to bring in those dollars to cover the goals that are coming up over the next couple of months. So what typically happens when someone looks at the budget and they see those goals, there's just pure panic. There's pure anxiety. There's pure overwhelm. And then it will just that will also suck the living life out of you. And then we just need to take a nap because we're just exhausted at the end of the day. We don't even have the energy to pick up the phone or the thought process to think behind a program that we want to launch and who are our ideal clients and all that. So the truth of the matter is, though, whether it is our finances or whether it is life in general, we get a lot of times to experience that tension. So there's always going to be this tension between where you are now and where you want to be. But in our society, unfortunately, we're not taught how to gracefully maneuver through that tension. So what ends up happening is that tension becomes quicksand. We are 1 foot in the quicksand, then we're the next foot in the quicksand, and next thing you know, we are up to our eyeballs in quicksand, and we're just done. We're out for the count. And so how do we, when we're in that tension, that state of tension, how do we gracefully maneuver out of that into this open, expanded state? The problem is our minds cannot take us there because the mind is actually the one creating the tension. It's creating the quicksand, and we're getting locked in it. And so we have to come up with a strategy that takes us above and beyond that so we can open up and expand even when we possibly see some numbers that are overwhelming. We would look at that in the budget, or you just fill in the blank of any other kind of example that would lead you to that state of tension. So the way that we do it is we kind of trick the mind a little bit. And so for an example, if you take your hand and if you close it and squeeze it really, really tight, when you squeeze that hand, you are in a very contracted state. So when we're in a contracted state, we don't need to take a 20-page survey to know we're in a contracted state. We feel it. We feel it. For me, it's on the back of my shoulders. It's that stress I can feel in the back of my shoulders. And so how do we gracefully maneuver from that contracted state? We want to go to that open hand, that open state. The way that we do it is quite simple. It's so simple that your mind might discount it, but just stick with me here. This has the potential to absolutely transform your life because typically, as we look at a budget, as we look at a bank account, that is going to evoke us emotionally. And a lot of times it can bring us to this anxiety, this fear, this panic. And especially as business owners, we don't know exactly how the next dollar is going to come in as well. And so the way that we maneuver from that contracted state to that opened state is this. We simply ask a question. There's nothing magical about the words that I'm going to share with you, but the secret is that it has to be a question. And so when I first started to learn this concept, what I realized, because in my business, I felt like I was hitting a wall. I would grow my company, hit a wall, grow my company, hit a wall, grow my company, hit a wall. What I did not realize that I was actually creating that wall myself. I was blown away when I found out that I was the one that was creating that wall. And so, for an example, rather than when I looked at my budget, when I looked at my bank account, rather than thinking, and I would think one of two things, I would think, oh, I can't believe it's this great. Or I would think, oh, I wish it would be more. And I would flip-flop between those thoughts, sometimes even several times a day. And I'm like, gosh, I can't understand where this wall is coming from for my business. And so when I learned this concept, it's simply to ask a question. So when I would look at my business bank balance, rather than thinking, I can't believe it's this great, because the antenna signal I'm putting out when I say, I can't believe it's this great, it's like, okay, Sonja can't believe it's this great. Shut off the presses, no more good for Sonja. Because she already can't believe it's this great. And I thought that was a really good thing to think. Or I wish it would be more. Well, then that one's obvious. The state of lack that we're basically living our lives out of. But I was doing both. I was flipping flopping on both. So instead of doing that and locking whatever that was in place based on my emotion of the moment, I simply looked at my bank account and I just thought, what more is possible? What more is possible? And so basically asking what more is possible, I'm not locking in that result. I'm not locking in whatever I'm seeing with my eyes. I'm opening up and expanding to what more is possible. Now, as those feelings of fear would bubble on up, as those feelings of anxiety would bubble on up, I would breathe into them. I would fully feel them. This is not about going, la, 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 I don't experience that. No. It's all over you. You're feeling it. So we're going to lean right into it. But this is just a very amazing strategy, because then once I started to lean into what more is possible, and then I even added to my question, so what more is possible? What more is possible in this moment is what I added. So what more is possible in this moment? And then I decided to add, if I literally can open up and ask anything, could I ask that this financial stuff, that my life, that it be fun and there be a sense of ease with it? So my full question is, what more is possible in this moment with fun and ease? And I don't say the whole thing every time. You can just say what more is possible. But what I love about that is that is a question. It basically could be used in any scenario. And I have a couple of examples that I can share with you. These don't have anything to do with finances. It's just going to go to show how you can use it in any situation. My oldest, she was taking a college class and she was sitting at the kitchen table. I'm right there. I'm washing dishes. I can see her. And she's starting to get frustrated. She's starting to get angry because the computer program was not loading on her computer for this class that she's taken. I'm washing dishes. I can feel the heat of anger rise up the back of my neck. So when I mentioned that when we're in a contracted state, we don't need to take a 20-page survey, it's true. I felt the heat of anger rise up the back of my neck. And I know that my knee-jerk reaction, had I not learned this concept, would have been to escalate her anger because I'm angry, I'm frustrated that I can't help her out. And so I'm going to, in my own anger, escalate her anger, and we're both going to get really incredibly frustrated. And first of all, it's not going to solve anything. So I learned this concept. So this is what I do instead. I fully feel the anger. I breathe into it, and then I just lean into, in my head, no one knows that I'm doing this. I'm not speaking any of this out loud. And I just say, okay, what more is possible for Kate? What more is possible for Kate? What more is possible for Kate? And then I let her know, I'm like, Kate, I'm just so sorry. I just don't know how to help you. And so she is sitting at the table. I just continue to wash dishes. What more is possible for Kate? What more is possible for Kate? I just started to say that over and over because I did not want to continue to go down that rabbit hole of anger. And then the next foot into anger, then up to my eyeballs in anger. I basically am catching this before it escalates into something. And about 30 minutes later, you guys, she just goes into the living room and she's like, Mom, it just fixed itself. So I just think sometimes in life, what that kind of taught me in that moment was, Sonja, maybe, just maybe you need to get out of the way. And so rather than getting stuck in that contracted, closed off state, I opened up my hand energetically and I just opened up to what more is possible. What, not even for me, it was for my daughter, what more is possible. And the true solution and the true answer, it found her and she was able to load that computer program on her computer. So that's I would say more of a negative example of this, but let's go ahead and go to another extreme. I have this super sweet moment with my two younger daughters. It is super, super sweet. And, as parents, for those of you that are parents, sometimes it's really, really hard. And but this just so happened to be a super sweet moment. And I heard this thought bubble on up of, I can't believe it's this great. Literally, I cannot believe it's this great. Well, and I thought that was a good thing to think because remember, I would do the same thing with my bank account. I can't believe it's this great. And I realized that is actually a contracted state. I'm judging that moment as great and simply saying, no more great, sweet moments with Sonja with her girls because she already can't believe it's this great. Let's shut off the presses with sweet moments with Sonja's girls. So whether it's my bank account, whether it's my children, whether it's life in general, we never think that we would cap abundance. But unfortunately, we do. We just do in everyday simple ways. So I leaned into that sweet moment and I just said, what more is possible? What more is possible? So I just started to lean in a bit